Number 10. The ruins of Lion City. With a name like Lion City, you know it has to have a terrifying past, and it does. Because if you're willing to go for a quick dive, you can see a town that was destroyed in the name of progress. The ancient ruins of Lion City can be found submerged in Qiandao Lake in China. It's also called Thousand Island Lake, stemming from the fact that there are over 1,000 islands throughout the body of water. The lake itself was created in 1959 when the government flooded the valley at the base of Five Lion Mountain to feed the new hydroelectric station. Over 290,000 people were forced to relocate because 1,300 villages were submerged. The most amazing is the city of Xichang, also known as Lion City. Its roots go back to the Tang Dynasty in 621 AD, making it roughly 1,400 years old. There are over 265 submerged arches throughout the city, 5 city gates, and it is right now undisturbed at the bottom of the man-made lake. It's in basically the same shape as it was when the flooding happened, and even before that, preserved in all its ancient glory. But what happened to the residents? Well, they were forced out of their homes and had to resettle elsewhere. I can tell you one thing. It was not a pleasant experience for any of them. I'm sure some valuables were left behind in the rush to uproot their lives and move out of the way of the new man-made lake. However, the only way to see the creepy remnants of the city is by diving down and swimming through the ruins. It's an experience that only comes once in a lifetime, making you feel like an underwater Indiana Jones. Number 9. USS Greyback. A missing submarine from World War II had been found after 75 years at the bottom of the ocean. It's the USS Greyback, and it was an American submarine that went missing during the war, only to be found decomposing under the waves of the East China Sea. The disappearance happened in 1944 after the submarine was attacked by Japanese aircraft. All 80 crew members were lost, but now the submarine had been rediscovered thanks to an underwater exploration project off Okinawa in Japan. The reason the sub had been missing for so long is that the coordinates had been mistranslated, missing a single digit. This had prevented crews from finding the submarine up until now. What's left of the submarine is kind of creepy. It's covered in barnacles and sea creatures, and it looks like a lost ghost ship. The families of the men who went down with the submarine have been informed of its discovery, which has allowed some people to gain much-needed closure. But perhaps the creepiest part about the submarine is that all 80 bodies are undoubtedly still locked inside the metal hull. The sub had never been retrieved, and probably won't be. But if it's ever opened, someone is going to find the skeletal remains of the crew, and it won't be pretty. Number 8. Underwater Island. In case you thought that every island in the world had been discovered already, you were wrong. Google Maps has recently detected a very strange island beneath the surface of the Arabian Sea in the shape of a bean. This one might not be as creepy as it is weird, but the plain fact is that nobody is sure what this bean-shaped thing is. It's been called an underwater island, and it has been brought to the attention of the local University of Fisheries and Ocean Studies, who can't seem to figure it out either. It looks to be around 3 miles long. It can be an underwater island that nobody knows about, or it could be some kind of sunken, bean-shaped UFO, or it could be the remnant of an ancient civilization that was submerged by an earthquake or a tsunami. What if an alien ship fell out of the sky and got stuck underwater? It's unlikely, but you just never know. Number 7. Walking underwater. A scientist in Australia has discovered a beetle that can walk underwater upside down. It's one thing to be a beetle and to walk across the surface of the water. It's something altogether bizarre to be able to walk upside down on the surface of the water, submerged. According to Live Science, there are 1,200 species of animals that can walk across water without so much as breaking a sweat. It's usually small insects like spiders that can do this, seeing as walking across water is a pretty delicate operation that takes a lot of finesse. It's the more minute creatures that are able to accomplish this amazing feat. John Gold was researching frogs in the Watauga Mountains when he made the shocking discovery. John is a researcher at Australia's University of Newcastle. He's the first one to videotape an insect walking upside down in the water. Even more amazing is that John claims the insect is able to rest on the underside of the water, like resting upside down on a horizontal mirror. The way it does this is equally fascinating. The creepy beetle traps air bubbles along its abdomen and legs, which provide just enough upward force to keep the creature pushed against the water's surface, while still being submerged. We don't know why the beetle does this yet, though the act probably keeps it safe from any would-be predators. It's like it's hiding in plain sight, but it seems to me that fish would come along and snap up these impressive insects. Number 6. Underwater Mummy. In the waters of Lake Michigan, the mummified body of a man from Iowa named Dirk Kahn had been found after 13 years submerged. To make his mummified remains even creepier, he was discovered still wearing his diving gear and an empty oxygen tank. Dirk disappeared in September of 1999 while exploring a shipwreck 225 feet below the surface of the water. But the dive went wrong. Dirk and his friend Greg Olson had to share oxygen from Dirk's tank, but there wasn't enough for both of them. As they swam towards the surface, Dirk never made it out, and officials spent years trying to uncover his body. It took 13 years, and finally he had been found almost perfectly preserved thanks to the cold temperature and extreme pressure at the bottom of the lake. Dirk's family is relieved to finally have his body back, though for them, the unexpected retrieval of his body reopened old wounds. Number 5. Toxic waste. An underwater drone has revealed a horrifying toxic waste dump off the coast of Los Angeles. For decades, there have been stories that chemical companies in Southern California used to dump their toxic waste into the local waters. It was never confirmed until now, when a group of marine researchers used drones to find the incriminating evidence. They discovered over 27,000 metal barrels resting at the top of the ocean, almost all of them filled with poisonous substances. This place looked like something from an apocalyptic underwater hell, with toxic waste barrels spread across the lifeless landscape, roughly 3,000 feet deep. The barrels were discovered between the Santa Catalina Islands and the coast of LA. In this small patch of ocean, there were over 100,000 pieces of debris, with most of them probably being waste receptacles. The whole place is polluted, and to be honest, beyond saving. It will probably take tens of thousands of years for all this toxic waste to degrade into materials that aren't dangerous to all living creatures. It's not only creepy, it's disturbing. The basin offshore was a dumping ground for decades, starting in the 1930s when companies began to accumulate industrial waste and needed somewhere to dump it. It likely went on until 1972 and beyond, even defying the Ocean Dumping Act. Do you think the government should spend time trying to figure out which companies violated the law and prosecute them? Or do you think it's not worth worrying about and we have more pressing problems in the world today? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Then remember to subscribe to American Eye if you haven't already for more intense videos. Number 4. An Egyptian shipwreck. A creepy Egyptian shipwreck has been discovered in the Mediterranean Sea. Dating back to around 2,200 years ago, the shipwreck was discovered buried under about 15 feet of ocean clay. It was once a military vessel, docked at the ancient city of Heraklion on the northern tip of Egypt. The city fell into the sea in the 2nd century BC. After it was decimated by earthquakes, the city literally fell sideways into the sea, and it wasn't until recently that archaeologists began excavating this mysterious underwater site. According to the archaeologists involved with the project, the ship probably sank because a temple collapsed, and its huge stone blocks fell on it during the earthquake. It was these huge blocks that kept the shipwreck pinned to the bottom of the sea, allowing it to slowly be covered over with muck. And it's not the only creepy discovery here either. This place is basically the Egyptian Atlantis, believed to be the city in which Cleopatra was actually inaugurated, and where she may have lived in a sprawling palace. The issue with finding treasure here is that everything is covered in mud and deeply submerged, making visibility quite low for archaeological divers. Number 3. Glurpo the Underwater Clown. There is nothing on this planet creepier than a clown, and there is nothing worse than an underwater clown. Meet Glurpo, the freakiest thing underwater anywhere. He was the only underwater clown in the world, and we are thankful for that. The history of the clown goes back to the 1950s and the Aquarena Springs amusement park, famous for its bizarre attractions. They had underwater ballerinas, creepy clowns, and even a swimming pig. The park opened in 1950 and then closed in 1996, with people remembering this strange place as one of the wackiest attractions in all of Texas, a place where underwater nightmares were born. Nobody really knows where Glurpo came from. He showed up at the park one day and became part of it. He was an aquatic jester who entertained kids. But as the times changed, so did Glurpo. His role was filled by many different actors, and through the years, he went from being a clown to a witch doctor in an attempt to keep things current. He vanished from the park a bit before 1996, probably because no one liked clowns anymore. And even though Glurpo is long gone, he lives on in the traumatic memories of the local Texans who were kids when they saw the creepy clown doing his underwater stunts. Number 2. Lake Laneir Ghosts. Legend has it that Lake Laneir in Georgia is plagued by one or more ghosts. The place is allegedly haunted, with one of the most famous ghosts being a dead woman who stalks the lake in a blue dress, wading through the water with her arms outstretched, reaching for swimmers from her watery grave. Even creepier than that, some have claimed that while swimming in the lake, they've heard spirits calling to them from deep below. Lake Laneir is in the foothills of the Georgia mountains, northeast of Atlanta, and a popular recreation spot for the long weekend. According to CNN, the lake was made in the 1950s when the local valley communities were flooded. These communities contained a single cemetery, and this is why some people believe the man-made lake is cursed. Plus, since 1994, at least 200 people have died swimming there, adding even more lost souls to the lake's dark and morbid history. It seems like it's clearly haunted to me. What do you think? And number 1, the giant hunter. New footage has revealed for the first time a hunting kraken. It's not a legendary kraken like from Greek mythology, but it is the closest thing to that we have on Earth. The video was taken by a team of researchers using a specialized camera known as Medusa. The camera utilizes red illuminators and bioluminescent lures to trick giant squids into getting close. The lure is actually known as an e-jelly, and it imitates the glow of a jellyfish. This is meant to attract the squids. It was the first time the lure was used, and it worked amazingly. Scientists were able to capture the best footage that the world has ever seen of a giant squid, and the squid was even hunting. Depending on who you ask, the giant squid is the scariest and creepiest thing in the entire ocean. They can grow to around 60 feet long and have long tentacles that are so strong they could probably rip all your limbs off at the exact same time, like a pack of dogs ripping apart a doll. But these beasts are elusive. Scientists have never even caught one live. This is the closest thing they've ever come to seeing a live squid in action, and the footage is pretty alarming. It looks like the ocean is even scarier than we thought. Number 10. Bat bombs. It was December of 1941 when a dentist from Pennsylvania, Lytle S. Adams, went on vacation at the Carlsbad Caverns. The caverns are home to somewhere around 1 million bats. Adams wasn't particularly fond of bats, but he was impressed by the potential he saw in them. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and America went to war, Adams sent the White House a letter detailing his plan to demolish entire Japanese cities using bats. That's right, Adams wanted to use bats to carry tiny, incendiary bombs. The whole idea was that bats would carry bombs to all the small nook and crannies throughout cities and blow them apart. This would create thousands of fires simultaneously over a much larger area than what a single bombing campaign could accomplish. Adams' plan was helped by the fact that he knew Eleanor Roosevelt personally. He managed to get an audience, even though his idea was a little weird, and it was actually picked up by the National Research Defense Committee. It was at this point that Donald Griffin, a bat expert, got involved. Everyone was very enthusiastic about the project. Within just a little while, bat bombs became a United States government research project. They decided to use Mexican free-tailed bats. However, the whole thing turned into a failure. Tests began in December of 1943. Over $2 million was spent, and the project was canceled. There was an accident in which the bombs went off and lit a hangar and a general's car on fire. Besides that, the bat bomb idea didn't really work. They seemed like a great idea for a military technology, but they couldn't actually set fires all over cities. Most of them actually just fell to the ground and died after being dropped from a plane. Number 9. The Stargate Project. Project Stargate was a very creepy mission undertaken by the CIA to try and develop psychic abilities and to use those psychic abilities as weapons of war. The truth of the project came to light when the CIA recently dumped 12 million documents onto the internet for the public to see. The organization has planned to harness supernatural powers in a way that has never been done before. They wanted to use psychic abilities to spy on their enemies. In their released documents, the CIA described psychoenergies as a special mental process in which a person would be able to perceive and change the characteristics of something or a person in space or time. In other words, they would be able to do things like look forward into another place using their mind, or to sneak into somebody's head, or telekinesis to move an object without touching it. In other words, the CIA wanted to make a platoon of creepy X-Men. Unfortunately, the project didn't work. Even though the CIA wanted to make a bunch of magic men, they simply couldn't figure out how. This makes sense considering telekinesis isn't a real thing, but amazingly, the project lasted from between 1978 and 1995. The CIA eventually conceded that they had gained no useful information and that it was basically a giant waste of time. Of course, they could just be saying that when in fact they really did create a league of super people and just don't want us to know about them. Number 8. The Diabeta Reactor. The Diabeta Reactor is a strange piece of technology. It's actually a neutrino experiment designed to make a very precise measurement of a very important neutrino, which it did about 10 years ago. Neutrinos are pretty hard to study, and the reactor was built for that sole purpose. Within just the first 55 days of operation, the discovery of the measurement was announced in March of 2012. The reactor itself was installed underground in a complex facility filled with large particle detectors immersed inside pools of water in China. The experiment was done with the help of US and Chinese scientists, with many of the scientists based out of the Institute of High Energy Physics in Beijing. But how does the reactor work? It uses detectors to pick up light signals inside liquids, with the signals being generated by interactions between antineutrinos oozing out of 6 reactors. Antineutrinos are weird, able to pass through most matter without being interrupted, and they're almost impossible to detect. By detecting and measuring antineutrinos, scientists should be able to figure out a little more about how our universe was made. It comes down to matter and antimatter, though it's yet to be seen how the ability to measure antineutrinos could have an effect on military technology. Perhaps we'll be able to make bigger, even scarier bombs. Number 7. Cyborg Moths. There is only one thing creepier than ordinary moths: cyborg moths. Inside a laboratory at North Carolina State University, researchers have managed to make the very first cybernetic moths that could be used in the coming years as living drones. These things are known as biobots, and they are the first step to creating a cyborg army of moths. They could be used to map ecosystems. They can help in search and rescue missions, or they can operate covertly as spies in enemy territory. The possibilities with a moth drone army are limitless. But how do scientists hack an animal? The truth is that animals have a lot of electric parts inside of them, even you and me. Our brains send electrical signals to our muscles. It's how we control our bodies. The same is said for bugs, like these cyborg moths. So, scientists are figuring out how to control these electric impulses in the brain of bugs to bend them to their will. It's been going on for a while too. A team of researchers at MIT even successfully steered a moth like a remote control car by using electrical impulses back in 2012. This time, they managed to rewire the bug so that they could control the flapping of its wings. They had to insert an electrode inside the insect's body while it was still in the cocoon. As the bug developed, its natural tissue fused to the implants, creating a very literal cyborg that the scientists can control. The technology is not perfected yet, but when it is, you can bet covert bug operatives will be buzzing through your neighborhood, maybe even watching you while you sleep. Number 6. The Puke Light. Flashlight that can induce vomiting. It's one of the creepiest non-lethal weapons available right now. A company in California has developed this flashlight, an LED-based technology that blares bright pulses of light that can make a person puke. It's such an interesting piece of technology that the Department of Homeland Security is funding the research. But how does the Puke Light work? It gives off a focused series of random pulses. Before the human eye is able to focus on a single frequency, another frequency interrupts it. This causes what is known as intracranial pressure, which has the ability to induce nausea, headaches, disorientation, visual impairment, immediate irritability, and of course, vomiting. Who's the weapon designed for? Law enforcement. Police and Border Patrol agents will likely be given the Puke flashlight because it works to render an opponent incapacitated and temporarily blind. It's a lot easier to subdue a suspect when they're blind and barfing. Do you think the Puke Light will be a useful tool for law enforcement? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Crowd-controlling stink bombs. What's worse than a flashlight that makes you puke? What about a grenade that stinks so bad you can faint? There's a stink bomb on steroids called the skunk. The device has been used in Israel, but is now on its way to the US. According to Fox News, the Israeli police and Israel Defense Forces began using these stink bombs several years ago. They were deployed by the military to help suppress hostile behavior without hurting the target. The odor released from the skunk bomb is so overwhelming that it drives everyone in the area away, and it keeps them away. The best time to use this giant stink bomb is during a riot or some kind of insurgency. It's as if 1,000 skunks all sprayed at the exact same time, making anyone within smelling distance sick to their stomach. The stench had been described as a disgusting combination of rotten meat, unwashed socks, and the sewer. Gross. Reuters even described the stench as a piece of rotting corpse from a sewer being put in a blender, then the blended liquid being sprayed right in your face. To make things worse, the disgusting stench sticks to you like glue. The only way to get it off is by a secret removal soap, which obviously the public does not have access to. The only way to really deal with it is to just wear the stink until it wears off. Number 4. Mustard gas. Mustard gas is without a doubt the creepiest and most terrifying technology ever employed during wartime. Mustard gas is also known as sulfur mustard, a chemical agent which causes devastating burning of a person's skin and eyes, as well as their respiratory tract. This toxic gas can be absorbed into the body by inhalation or ingestion, or even if it just breezes past your face. It was used for the first time in World War I, with both sides seeing how horrendously efficient it was in incapacitating its victims. Mustard gas is mostly colorless, though sometimes it has a faint yellow tint to it, which is how it got its name. Those who have been unfortunate enough to experience mustard gas have described it as smelling like garlic and sulfur. What happens when a person comes in contact with mustard gas? Seeing as it's a blister agent, it causes redness and itching almost immediately, and a person will break out in blisters, then leak yellow pus. You can go blind, you can stop breathing, your nose will probably run, and because it affects the digestive tract, you will also experience horrible abdominal pain, a high fever, and of course, diarrhea and vomiting. And if you needed another reason mustard gas is so awful, is that sometimes symptoms don't show up for up to 24 hours. It's not lethal either, and so those who have become the victims of a mustard gas attack will survive, but be horribly disfigured by chemical burns and probably blind for the rest of their lives. Mustard gas was banned by the United Nations in 1993, though there have been reports, according to Live Science, that similar chemical agents are still being used in the Middle East. Number 3. Operation Midnight Climax. Operation Midnight Climax was part of MK-Ultra, the top-secret project by the CIA to try and turn the hallucinogen LSD into a weapon. MK-Ultra itself lasted from between 1953 and 1973. However, Operation Midnight Climax was a submission with some seriously creepy undertones. According to History.com, operatives working on research for the project actually employed prostitutes to help lure completely innocent men to safe houses operated by the CIA. Once the prostitute had the John secured at the research site, he would be dosed with LSD. That's not all. There would be a two-way mirror in the room so that the CIA agents could watch what happens to the man as the LSD kicked in. Considering the men were with prostitutes, you can pretty much guess what the agents had to watch. There were also recording devices installed in the rooms, disguised as ordinary electrical outlets. The creepy experiments took place mostly in San Francisco and New York City. With almost no oversight for the program, the CIA agents were allowed to do basically whatever they wanted. But in the end, LSD couldn't really be weaponized, and all the agents accomplished was being perverts. Number 2. Flying robots. Robots are taking over. At least, that's what Russia says. According to them, soldiers will be replaced by robots on the battlefield, and it's only a matter of time. Vitaly Davidov recently said that living fighters are going to gradually be replaced by faster and more accurate robots. And this guy knows what he's talking about. He's the deputy director of the Advanced Research Foundation in Russia. Apparently, Russia already has a roadmap to how military robotics will come into play, but nobody knows exactly what these robots will look like. Are we dealing with a Terminator-type situation? That's yet to be seen. So far, robots are mostly smart drones, automated guns, and of course, cybernetic moths. But the chances of creepy, humanoid robots leading the charge into the next war are actually pretty good. Does that freak you out? And number 1, Bionic Machine Shark. There is a creepy bionic machine shark that was recently unveiled at a military technology show in China. This thing is absolutely horrifying. It's a life-size shark, completely mechanical, designed for surveillance and reconnaissance missions. It was displayed in the China National Convention Center in Beijing, swimming around in a shark tank. It's a literal metal monster. And the newest one is a long series of drones, disguised as animals that China has used to spy on its own citizens. This is the same country that back in 2018 unleashed a flock of spying bird drones over the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, home to the large Muslim population that has been in the news a lot lately. Many people suspected China was using their flock of spying birds to keep tabs on the locals. But what do they plan to do with their bionic shark? It can apparently move at high speeds, it can carry large loads, and it can monitor, track, and search. The shark can't actually eat anybody. It's no danger to swimmers at the beach. However, it is kind of unnerving to think that there are robotic sharks out there spying on people. I mean, what's next? Robotic whales? Killer robot dolphins? Schools of cyborg fish that can take down fishing boats? We can't say for sure. All we know is that in the next 20 years, The oceans could be the battleground for cybernetic animals. Number 10. Croatian Women's Prison Camp. Sveti Gregor was once a women's penitentiary camp in Croatia, but has since been completely forgotten. It is now an old and abandoned ruin on an uninhabited island. Back in the day, when Yugoslavia was still a place in the 1940s, the prison was used to hold opponents of the Communist Party. The island is about 2.6 square miles. The island is located in the Adriatic Sea, between the islands of Goliotok, Kirk, and Rab. On medieval maps, it used to be called Arta. Its current name translates as Saint Gregor. Before the penitentiary was built, there was a small village where people hunted deer. The village was quiet and peaceful. Then the land was a scary and terrified prison. And today, the atmosphere is more than a little creepy. The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was not kind to those who didn't follow the rules. And between 1948 and 1953, it's hard to imagine the horrors that went on in this prison. It was actually the female prisoners who were forced to construct the buildings that would ultimately hold them. But the brutality didn't end at forced labor. According to historical records, the prisoners were treated horribly, degraded in every possible way, and even forced to beat one another in front of the guards for their entertainment. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Sveti Gregor closed in 1986 and was subsequently abandoned. The old buildings are still on the island today, but nobody lives there. Number 9. The abandoned nuclear plant. The Santa Maria de Garona nuclear power plant was inaugurated in 1970 and today is an ugly, abandoned ruin. The plant was inaugurated by the Spanish dictator, Francisco Franco, with the technology to build the power plant gained by the American company General Electric. At the time, Garona was the biggest nuclear power plant of its kind anywhere on the European continent. But back in the 1980s, Greenpeace began to protest the nuclear power plant, with protests spurred by the accident in Harrisburg in 1979. The campaign to close down the nuclear plant actually went on until just recently, when in 2012, a year after the disaster at Fukushima, the plant was finally closed down. Regulations for the active maintenance of the power plant make it necessary to carry out regular drills in case of a nuclear accident. The towns in the surrounding areas meet and plan evacuation points for this type of incident, and even have a decontamination protocol. Today, the plant is a scary ruin filled with old, rusting technology. The plant is closed to the public, but hasn't been disassembled, so the huge pieces of hardware are still there. You're not allowed to visit though, as the place is basically condemned and extremely dangerous. Number 8. Russian chemical plant. There's an abandoned Russian chemical plant that, according to Business Insider, could set off a catastrophic environmental disaster like the one that took place at Chernobyl. Rosprirodnadzor, Russia's environmental agency, monitors actions that may have a negative impact on the environment. The head of Russia's environmental safety agency, Svetlana Radianova, has said recently that the chemical plant is filled with mercury and unknown chemicals, and it has simply been left to rot in rural Siberia. It's called the Usoya Chemprom plant, and it once manufactured chlorine and other chemicals. The facility first opened in 1933 in the Irkutsk region. It covers an area of about 1,500 acres. The only reason the plant shut down is that it went bankrupt in 2017. Nearby the plant is a town with about 80,000 people in it, but nobody goes near the chemical factory. 1, because it's creepy and scary. 2, because the chemicals inside the plant, specifically the high levels of mercury, can damage a person's kidneys and their nervous system. These substances have even been known to cause tumors to grow in rats. Scientists are still investigating the possible links between pesticides and disease in people, with some studies indicating that high levels of exposure to certain pesticides may raise one's risk of cancers like leukemia. To sum things up, this is not the kind of abandoned place you want to be urban exploring. Number 7. The Essex County Isolation Hospital. The Essex County Isolation Hospital was crafted near the city of Newark. It was built with the purpose of caring for those afflicted by infectious diseases. There were already psychiatric hospitals and tuberculosis sanatoriums in the region, but there was nothing designed to isolate people who were highly infectious. The city of Newark purchased the land in 1896 and began to build various structures to house the ill patients, as well as buildings for the hospital staff, such as a theater and a laundry service. They built a little community, and seeing as this was back over 100 years ago, the hospital also had a few acres of farmland. Disaster struck in 1917 though, when a cold snap caused the heating and lighting to break. and 24 people died and 32 people got frostbite. By the middle of the 1920s, the hospital was no longer really needed, and so it was transformed into a general hospital instead of an isolation hospital. But then over time, the hospital became more and more crowded. New mental illness treatment facilities appeared, and eventually, the hospital was too outdated to even be useful. It closed its doors in 2007 and was left abandoned for the next 10 years, until 2017, demolition crews came in and began to knock parts of the hospital down. Though even today, some of the abandoned wings remain. Do you think the Essex County Isolation Hospital is haunted? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Dinosaur World. Dinosaur World is one of the most bizarre and freaky abandoned places anywhere in Arkansas. It was a tourist attraction in the town of Beaver, covering 65 acres and including hundreds of giant sculptures of dinosaurs, prehistoric monsters, and of course, cavemen. It also boasted the largest mural of Noah's Ark anywhere in the world. When it closed in 2005, it was the largest dinosaur park on the planet. Its history goes back to 1967, when Emmett Sullivan crafted almost a dozen replicas of dinosaurs. Then in the 1970s, the park was sold and a 40-foot tall statue of King Kong was built. Throughout the years, more and more statues were built, and more people came to visit. But by the early 2000s, interesting dinosaurs had basically disappeared, and nobody cared about the park anymore. They were forced to close, and within just 1 year, the whole park was overgrown by nature. It really did look like something out of a lost prehistoric world. Nobody did anything to the place. It was just left alone, and in August of 2011, a fire ran through the park and destroyed the main building. Today, it's a creepy, half-burned ruin filled with bug-eyed dinosaur statues. Number 5. Pryot Town. Pryot Town in Ukraine is one of the scariest ghost towns anywhere in the world. It was left abandoned after the nuclear disaster at a nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The nuclear disaster happened on April 26, 1986, and every last citizen of Pryot was forced to leave everything they owned behind and evacuate immediately, lest they turn into mutated monsters. About 30 people died in the explosion, and a few thousand died because of cancer from being exposed to the dangerous radiation. Pryot itself was the closest town to the reactor, with a population of about 49,000 strong. It was built in the 1970s strictly to house the people working at Chernobyl. There are 15 schools, a huge hospital, 25 stores, a handful of gyms, and even cinemas and an amusement park. It was a luxury in the Soviet Union, but in just 3 short hours, it was a ghost town. The absence of humans have been excellent for wildlife, though. In 1986, wildlife was not doing well in Chernobyl. There were too many people and farms. After everyone left, the deer and boar population returned, and despite the high radiation levels, they were not showing any obvious signs of mutations, though apparently the plants turned strange, with some reports that some were glowing. The animal populations grew enormously. Today, the animal populations more closely resemble that of a national park than a radioactive contaminant zone. As it turns out, animals prefer a nuclear disaster over normal human habitation. All these decades later, Pryot is still abandoned and lifeless. The only way in is through a guided tour, and much of the place is still plagued by radiation. There are gas masks everywhere, broken dolls scattered throughout empty houses, and it wouldn't be much good for anything other than maybe the set of a horror movie. Number 4. Doris Station. Doris Station in South Korea is less than a mile from the boundary of the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. It's a modern train station that was completed in 2002. For a brief time, freight trains traveled from the northern side of the border into Dorison. That was back when relations between North and South Korea were a little stronger. But then when tensions flared once more, the station was shut down, and it has been abandoned ever since. Today, the station sits completely empty and unused, with signs inside the terminal pointing passengers to board trains in Pyongyang, trains that will never come. It was more a symbol of hope than anything, and the fact that it's abandoned today leaves a lot of people in both North and South Korea feeling pretty hopeless. The emptiness of the station itself makes the place scary, and it's a grim reminder of the division of the Korean peninsula and the violence that can erupt at any moment. This is not a place you want to be caught inside of, as it's way too close to the danger of the DMZ and the watchful North Korean soldiers. Number 3. Alagany Lunatic Asylum. There is nowhere quite as scary as an abandoned lunatic asylum, and the Alagany Lunatic Asylum may just be the scariest. It was once a psychiatric hospital operated by the state of West Virginia. It was operational from between 1864 and 1994. It was designed in the beautiful Gothic revival style by an architect from Baltimore. This makes the asylum just that much creepier. It was designed to hold 250 people at maximum, but like most of the institutions in America by the 1950s, it was horribly overburdened with at least 2,400 patients. Because of the overcrowding, there was a huge issue with sickness, people literally being locked inside of cages, and the state ordering a ridiculous number of lobotomies to reduce the patient population. They thought that if they could simply pull out pieces of people's brains, they could ship them back home and call them cured. In 1994, the asylum was forced to close. Ever since, the building and the large grounds which it sits upon have been abandoned. There have been occasional events, such as fairs and church gatherings. In 1999, there was significant damage when the county police officers decided to play a game of paintball inside. Now, it's an abandoned museum where you can go on a tour and look for the ghosts of the mentally deranged. Are you brave enough to go? Number 2. Mandeu, Ancient City. In India, Mandeu is an abandoned ruin that will give you nightmares. It comes from the Mughal area and has been abandoned and in disrepair for at least 400 years, according to the Huffington Post. Back when India was a Muslim nation, Mandeu was the capital. It was a bustling fortress town, filled with tombs, palaces, mosques, and impressive monuments. Today, though, it's a little freaky. The Hoshang tomb is the oldest marble building in all of India, while the Rupmati Pavilion overlooks a cliff with a sheer drop 1,000 feet to the deadly rocks below. This is an abandoned oasis that almost no one visits, and for good reason. It's often covered in an eerie fog. Some say it's filled with ghosts, and the atmosphere is so ghoulish that most of the locals avoid the place at all costs, as if it's the ruin of some evil necromancer's palace. And number 1, the Soenji Temple. The Soenji Temple in Japan is one of the creepiest abandoned places ever. The temple has a shrine to Japanese water goblins, known as kappa. In Japanese folklore, these aquatic goblins are known for kidnapping children when they walk over bridges and pulling them down into the muck below. The kappa is a turtle-like monster with a bowl on its head that it must keep filled with water in order to stay alive. There are all kinds of weird myths surrounding these goblins, and the Soenji Temple in Tokyo is where they've been immortalized in tons of little statues. The temple was built in the 17th century and abandoned sometime after that. Historians aren't exactly sure when, but even though the weird temple is abandoned, some people continue to show up and leave behind offerings of cucumbers, which is the kappa's favorite food. There's a treasure chamber hidden inside the temple, which contains drawings of little goblins on old scrolls, and even what legend says is the mummified arm of a real, physical kappa monster. Thanks for watching. Would you dare visit any of these creepy places? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more. See you next time.